Here is the second part of the Harmony neck reset where I go into some details about how I actually accomplished it. In these initial pictures you can see it's a pretty high action. Unfortunately, I did not add a ruler. These initial pictures show what the heel looked like before and then the taping that I did after calculations so that I could trim it back. Just to clarify, I wound up cutting with a saw back to where the tape was. Gave some very nice clear lines. I took my time here and I wanted to be able to actually re-glue it back in the way it had been done at the factory. In this picture you can also see some of the relief cuts that I made both to the dovetail and to the area inside the cheeks. After trimming, unfortunately the bottom of the dovetail will wind up bumping into the block, as well as the spaces that are inside the cheeks that touch the body. They effectively touch nothing, so there is a very good reason to wind up paring that away. At this point, you hope that you can put the neck back in, apply a few shims, do a little bit of lining up, and then you're ready to go. Unfortunately, this guitar was really not made to be so easily fixed. As I mentioned before, the ladder bracing that's in the top doesn't help anything. And I let this thing sit for a few years, only to find that when I put it back together, I was way off. To clarify, the action had become very low. The strings were actually touching the frets from the 14th fret on. When using a dovetail neck, the manufacturers basically put the neck together on the body, and then they adjust the action by having a thicker or thinner bridge. That's fine for the initial assembly, but it's not very helpful when it comes time to doing a neck reset, as you may have to shave a lot off that bridge and then it won't really work right. For these reasons, I decided to scrap the idea of re-gluing everything and instead switch to a bolt-on style neck. This way I could go back and readjust as needed. Additionally, I was going to have to do some magic on the heel in order to deal with the fact that the action was now too low. So before doing anything else, I thought it best to glue a thin shim of maple to the heel that I could then shave off as needed. I also played around with the saddle height a little bit and was able to get a pretty decent action at the 12th fret, as you see here, 3/32. But a few days later, the wood started to shift and all of a sudden the action was unplayable again. Fortunately, I have converted the guitar to being a bolt-on neck, and now I can go back and do the next steps in the adjustments to get it exactly right. The final measurement actually turned out to be 7/32, which is not shown here in the picture. To make life easy for the adjustments, you're going to want to grab two devices, a string winder and a capo. You see they're both here in my hands. What you'll do initially is you'll use the string winder and loosen the strings up just a bit. And after you loosen the strings up, I don't know, it takes a couple turns, and it really just depends on whether or not you want to do this by hand or you want to do this with a string winder. But I think it'll make life pretty easy. And then you'll see there's a nice slick little trick that comes up here in a second. Luckily for this video, I only needed to do this once. But in the steps prior to this that I did not film, I had to do this a few times. So it's pretty helpful to have these tools. With the strings nice and loose, you can see here as I pull on them, I like to apply a capo somewhere around the 6th fret. It helps keep everything very neat and organized instead of having strings flying all over the place, wanting to jump off the nut. You clamp this on here, and then you can move on to pulling out the pins. So here we are, we lay the guitar down. Now I reach in and just sort of pry them out. You either use the end of your string winder, maybe a screwdriver. Be careful here, but I think we all know how to do this when we're changing strings. So we pull the pins, and then we just carefully pull out the strings. It's pretty easy to do since all the tension has been removed. And as I said before, because it's capoed at the 6th fret, everything stays in order and stays together. For this modification this time it's not so important, but you'll see if you need to do this and make a lot of adjustments, it's pretty nice to have it so you can just pop the strings right back in. To do the adjustments, we need a few measurements. I've listed them here, and then once I apply them, we can put it into one of the online calculators or do the math on our own. You'll see what we need to figure out is how much to trim off or what the cut will be. And we start out by needing these. I'm going to have to get the heel length, and that's from the bottom of the fretboard to the cap, as well as measuring from the 14th fret to the saddle. That's where the neck joins the body and goes in. The action settings, initial and final, we already had those before. The initial is what I measured out, and final is what you'll see on most factory specs. Somewhere near 330 seconds should get us in a pretty decent ballpark. Just a quick look here. Inside, you can see where I put the bolt. It goes through the block. And all I'll need to do to take the neck off again is just to undo that bolt. Reach in there with a ratchet and it should slide right out. Just to show how quickly this works, I take my ratchet, put it in there, crank it a few times, pull out the bolt, get a nice little view of the bolt really quick here. Just holding it up, it's a 1/4 inch bolt, and just reach over and it slides right out. To give you an idea of what the neck pocket looks like, and also what we have with the tenon and the bolt-on system, you can see I drilled the holes here. I actually drilled 2, but only I'm using 1. I'll probably put a dowel to fill the other one in. And now we take a look at the heel a bit, and you can see where I've relieved it. You can also see where I had to shave it back a little tiny bit there, and where I put the insert in. Most of this could have been seen in the earlier pictures, but this is just to quickly review again, and also gives you a nice little view of where that shim is glued on the bottom. To get the heel length, I use my digital calipers. In all fairness, I already measured this before filming because I wasn't sure how to get it captured on there, but you'll see when I hold it up, it's about 3.1415 inches, and I'm going to fill that in on the chart that I need so that I can do those calculations. And I've reattached the neck so that I can use a ruler and measure from the saddle to the 14th fret. I would have liked to use something more accurate like a caliper, but this distance is a little too great for that. You'll see you got about 11.25. I put 11.27 in the measurement. So I went through and did the calculations. I need to cut off about 0.07 inches. To measure that distance, I put together some automotive feeler gauges. It came up just shy of 0.07, which actually gives me a little bit of breathing room. It's always easier to file or cut off a little bit more later. Now you can see with the neck, I hold up these feeler gauges, and ironically it matches the thickness of that maple shim, taking me back to my original measurements from a few years ago. So it turns out I just wasn't patient enough, and I really just need to get rid of this shim. The picture isn't great, but the shim came right off. I just kind of pried it off with my nails. So the next step is just to put it back together and string it back up. See how it comes out. Here's the final action. It's about 3:30 seconds, as you can see in the picture. It plays decently when you're just playing open chords. There are a few high spots. I'm going to need to go back and level the frets a little bit, especially the 14th fret. It seems to stick up just a bit high. It's tough to get the right sound on the 12th, 13th, frets for all the strings. But overall, this is decent. As I mentioned before, the guitar has the wrong bracing, so I'm guessing it's going to move a little bit again. But for now, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully this video was helpful to everyone. It shows a little bit about how to do things. And if you have any questions, please write them down for me. Feel free to send me emails or send me a message, and I will do my best to help out. And for those of you who are out there trying to do some resets, good luck. Be patient and be willing to work with it a few times. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure if you like this to click like, and hopefully you'll subscribe.